Hey guys, today we're going to talk about another function, square root functions. So the parent function for a square root function is f of x equals the square root of x. So just like our other functions, we need to know what the parent function looks like and some key points. So let's plug in some points. The points we're going to use for x are 0, 1, and 4. So when x is 0, well, square root of 0 is 0. When x is 1, square root of 1 is 1. When x is 4, square root of 4 is 2. Can't take the square root of negative numbers, so we're not going to plug in any negative numbers. So let's plot those points. 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 4, 2. Okay, well you can see that the points will not line up in a straight line, so it is a curve, and this is what the curve looks like. Okay, so very similarly to the vertex of an absolute value and the vertex of a quadratic, there's a point for a square root function, and it's the starting point. It's not necessarily a vertex, because technically it's not a turning point, but it's a starting point. Where does the graph start? Well, in this case, it starts at 0, 0. At the origin. And the domain are the values from that point. In this case, x is greater than or equal to 0, and y is also greater than or equal to 0. From that point, it goes on to the right forever, and from that point, it goes up forever. Okay, let's look at another one. So look at the next one. F of x is equal to the negative square root of x. So just like we've done, we can investigate the graph by graphing it in our calculator. Okay, so I'm going to graph it. Negative square root of x, standard window. Okay, so as we probably thought, it was going to be a reflection. Okay, so you can see that it's reflected. I'll make sure I know where that starting point is. Okay. Well, the starting point is 0, 0. You can see after 0, 0 it has an error. Okay, so 0, 0 is where it starts. Okay, and then we can just get a couple other points off of our calculator. I've got 1, negative 1 is a good point, and 4, negative 2 is also a good point. I would not pick decimals if I were you. This is what the graph looks like. Okay, and the starting point, 0, 0. And the domain from that starting point is moving from the left to the right, so the domain is x is greater than or equal to 0. But notice, since it was a reflection, the range will be y is less than or equal to 0. Okay, let's look at the next one. F of x equals square root of x plus 1. Okay, well, we can graph it in our calculator again, do some investigation. When you graph it like this, make sure the plus 1 goes outside the square root, so you need to hit the right arrow so they'll go outside, because that's what we're shown in our equation. Hit graph. And we probably assumed it would move up, and it did. So let's get some points. So the starting point, that first point next there is 0, 1. Then I have 1, 2, and 4, 3. So let's graph those points. So I've got 0, 1, 1, 2, and 4, 3. Okay. Starting point did go up 1, so it's 0, 1. Domain, all real numbers, not all real numbers, all numbers larger than 0. X is greater than or equal to 0. And the range, all numbers larger than 1. Okay. All right, why don't you guys pause the video right now and do the next one and see if you can get it right. We'll hit pause. When you're done, you can hit play and check. Okay, check your answers, see how you did. right, let's look at the last one on this page. So notice the difference in the last one on this page and then the one that looks similar, okay? The +1 on this last one is underneath the square root. It's underneath that square root, okay? So let's graph in our calculator. So we have square root of x plus 1. I'm going to make sure to put that +1 underneath the square root. Oh, so notice what happened. Instead of moving up, it actually moved to the left. Okay, so let's look at a couple of points. So -1, 0 is going to be my starting point. Then I can use 0, 1, and 3, 2. Okay. So this is similar to parentheses in our other functions. Okay, in this case, we're not necessarily going to have parentheses for a square root function. We're going to have what is happening underneath the square root. Okay, so plus will be a move to the left. Okay, minus will be a move to the right. Okay, so the domain in this case is x is greater than or equal to. The starting point is -1, so from -1. Range is y is greater than or equal to 0 because it is on the x-axis. Okay, so let's look back at these graphs. Okay, so the first one, the change was a reflection over that x-axis, so it was a reflection. And that makes sense. There's a negative out front, so that follows the pattern of our previous functions. Okay, this next one was a shift up 1. And the one after that was a shift down 2. And then the last one on this page was a shift to the left 1. Okay, the change that's happening is underneath the square root, and it's going to be the opposite. Okay. All right, here's what I want you to do now. I want you to go to the next page and do the next two. All right, see if you can get them right. All right. Describe the change too. And pause the video right now, do the next two, and then check your answers. All right, check your answers, see how you did. First one, see the starting point, you see the domain and the range, and the only thing that happened was it was a shift to the right 4. And last one, a lot going on here. Okay, well, there's a negative out front, there's some horizontal change underneath the square root, and then there's some vertical change outside of the square root. Okay, so check your starting point, domain and range. Notice how your domain and range matches the starting point. There was a reflection, there was a shift left 1, and there was a shift down 2. So hopefully you were successful with those two, and if you weren't, then hopefully you can see what you did wrong. Okay, all right, well, let's write some equations given the description. Okay, all right, it says write an equation that moves f of x equals the square root of x right 2 units and down 1 unit. Okay, so if we have a movement to the right 2, that's going to happen on the inside of that square root, and it'll be opposite. So going to the right means we need to subtract 2. And then a shift down 1 will be outside of the square root minus 1. So your equation looks like that. Okay, let's look at the next one. It says write an equation that moves f of x equals the square root of x right 3 units and down 2 units. The shift to the right is, again, going to happen on the inside of the square root. If we're going right 3, it's got to be the opposite, x minus 3. And then down 2 units is on the outside, minus 2. Okay. All right, I want you to pause the video, try the next two, and see if you can get those equations correct. Hit pause now. Okay, check your answers. Hopefully you were successful in those answers, and you're having success with writing equations. Okay, All right, let's move on to the last page. Okay, last page. So we're going to kind of pull it all together and work backwards. So I'm going to give you the graph, and you need to give me the equation. Okay, so look at this first one. This first one looks like a V. So hopefully you remember that that is our absolute value function. Absolute value function. So one thing we might want to do is out here, right? All right, I know that's absolute value function. So here, that's what the parent equation for absolute value looks like. Okay, so we can actually write the equation given some information on the graph. So I want to know what the vertex is. Well, it looks like 1, 2 for my x-coordinate, my vertex, and up 1. Okay, for my y-coordinate, my vertex, and it's facing up, so it'll be positive. Okay, so if I remember on absolute value, the original vertex was at 0, 0, so it went to the right 2 and up 1. So I'm going to write that, right 2, up 1. Okay, and there's nothing else happening here in this one. It's facing up. So my equation, right 2, happens on the inside of this absolute value bracket, and it's opposite, so x minus 2 on the inside, and up 1 would be a plus 1 on the outside. Okay, and that's what the equation of that graph is. Little tougher to get these, but not impossible. You guys are smart. I bet you can handle it. All right, let's look at the next graph. So absolute, or not absolute value, looks like a square root graph. Okay, square root graph. And it definitely has a starting point right here. Starting point. So I want to know what that starting point is. So it goes left 2, so negative 2, and up 3, positive 3. Okay, so I know it's going to follow this form since it's a square root. And it went to the left 2 and up 3. So I'm going to put that inside my equation. So I've got f of x. So left 2 is opposite underneath my square root. Up 3 is outside the square root. There is our equation for that graph. Okay. What parent functions do you know so far? Okay. Well, you should know 4 right now. So I want you to pause the video without looking back at your notes. Just take a minute to see if you can write down the 4 parent functions that you know, and then check your answer when you think you got them by hitting play. All right, you know linear, quadratic, absolute value, and square root so far. Hopefully you're able to remember those. Not too hard. We've only done 4 of them so far. So the notes are finished for today. You can turn off the video, put your computers away, and make sure that you get your assignment completed. And I will see you guys on Monday.